There has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Happy New Year's Eve, my Veg Your Bestie. Happy New Year's to all of you listening to the podcast the day it drops, which is New Year's Eve 2024. I have another cracker of a guest for you this week to ring in the new year with possibility and positivity. Victoria Moran. Victoria Moran is a best-selling author, podcaster, veteran vegan, vegan educator. Victoria's team actually reached out to me, and I nearly fainted dead away. But Victoria wants to tell you, all my Veg Your Besties, about her newest book, number 14, Age Like a Yogi, A Heavenly Path to a Dazzling Third Act, which is coming out on January 14th, and it's already available for pre-order. And, you know, I've got a lot of books in recent years which have maybe only one or two ideas in it that are just stretched out to fill 200 or 300 pages. This book, I was lucky enough to get an advanced copy. It is full of information, resources in there, inspiration, a real practical guide to all the wisdom of yoga and the youth-preserving, the health-supporting secrets of Ayurveda, which is a little bit less well-known by most of us, which is yoga's sister science. I think you're going to love this really interesting interview with a fascinating woman, a really talented person in her own right, never mind the fact that she is such an example of vegan wisdom, compassion, and how vibrant we can be in that dazzling third act. Okay, listen to Victoria and I'll see you on the other side of the interview. Victoria Moran, welcome to Veg Your Best.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It is such a pleasure. It's such a delight. And I am very honored that you are going to be talking about your latest book. Which number is this? Is this 14, 15?
Well, it's 14, but now that you've said 15, I guess I have to write another one.
Oh, I've given you a very busy 2025 then. So you've got a new book coming out called Age Like a Yogi.
That's it. We're going to age like a yogi, a heavenly path to a dazzling third act.
Oh, wow. I'm glad you said the second half of the title. I can't wait to hear all about this from you. First of all, what does it mean to age like a yogi?
It means to go forward in life with meaning and purpose. Now, you certainly don't have to be a yogi or interested in yoga, philosophy, and practice to have a life full of purpose. It's just one of the many ways out there to get one. And also, it's something that regardless of your worldview, regardless of what you're doing in terms of fitness or stress management or whatever, you can bring in some of these tools from yoga as well. I love the phrase, take what you like and leave the rest. And yoga is very amenable to that. One thing that aging like a yogi is not, although, I mean, it could be for some people, but it's not about doing all sorts of contortionist asanas. And we think these days that that is yoga. I think if you ask people on the street, what is yoga? They would say, well, downward facing dogs and standing on your head. And that is a part of it, one part of it, but just a tiny little part. And what's cool about that these days is it has become accessible. And if you know where to look, you can find hatha yoga, this kind of the quote exercise part of yoga that is good for all bodies, all ages, all fitness levels. But even without any of the physical part at all, there is a richness and a depth here that could make anybody's life at any age a whole lot better.
Well, you talk about it in your book. I was privileged enough to get a copy, an advanced PDF to take a look at it. And you talk about, is it 3,000 years of yogic philosophy and
Yeah, 3,000 years written. And the idea is that it's probably a couple of thousand years older than that, that these teachings go back truly to the golden age of India. And they may actually have started somewhere else. We're not absolutely certain when you get back in the recesses of history, but it definitely counts as ancient wisdom. And one of the things that is so cool about yoga is that so many of the teachings have been corroborated by modern science. So the nutritional teachings, for example, I always say that the ancient yogis were the first nutritionists because they were looking, really using the scientific method to observe what happens when you eat certain foods in terms of giving yourself a healthful body and long life, which if you're a yogi, you need that because you want to be doing spiritual exploration for as long as possible. And also what is going to provide a physical, mental vehicle that is amenable to meditation. Now, those of us who are modern yogis and we're householders and we're doing all kinds of things, maybe we're going to meditate 15 minutes a day or 40 minutes a day. But these people were talking about making that pretty much their lives. And they needed to have a body that was very steady so that they could do this. And they realized that there's a lot of foods out there, foods that are old and stale, and today's processed foods or ultra processed foods would be in this category, that just make a person kind of sleepy and dense. And then there are these highly stimulating foods and all kinds of caffeine and eggs and salt and too much hot spice. And they get people all excited and worked up. And then in between, there's this beautiful, beautiful category of foods that are called sattvic. There are lots of sattvic aspects of life, not just food. Sattvic is the energy of beauty and poise and calmness and spirituality. And the foods that are sattvic are fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes or beans, and nuts and seeds. Now, for the ancient yogis, they also added milk from healthy cows. And I find it interesting that even back then they had that caveat. And of course, now I firmly believe, as a dedicated vegan, that you would be hard pressed to find truly healthy cows. And I think, given the population of the earth today, it's going to be impossible to find karma-free milk. But other than the dairy, those recommendations from thousands of years ago are exactly what we're hearing from the College of Lifestyle Medicine. I mean, it's pretty cool.
It is very cool, and the idea that you put a lot into your book about the history of veganism, and well, actually, you say vegetarianism, and in yoga, and why you have a different point of view about the dairy products. I think a lot of my listeners know I would totally agree with you on that. I feel how would we give 8 billion people dairy from healthy cows? It would be even if we didn't bring too many ethics into it, just impossible, really.
Yes, and I think there is an energy, a kind of trending in our country right now, and perhaps in the world at large, of wanting to hearken back to an earlier time. I think that the world looks so frightening and there are so many dangers out there that lots and lots of people want to go back to some sort of way of living that maybe our great grandparents might have lived, but we don't really know because we weren't here. It might not have been all that great. Maybe it was. But I think that because of this, a lot of people are thinking about, down on the farm, and let's get back to raising our own animals and milking our own cows and having raw dairy and all these kinds of things. And the idea is very understandable. I mean, the world is scary. Who wants to go out there in 2024 when there are not only threats around every corner, but you can't get customer service and talk to a human? I mean, it's an interesting time to be alive. However, what's so interesting about that is that certain things, as much as we would love to Norman Rockwell our lives, it just won't work. I was visiting lovely people who were dedicated to yoga, and they were telling me about how the Hare Krishna people have what they call ahimsa milk, and they raise the cows themselves, and the mother gets to nurse the baby as long as the baby wants to nurse. And when the mother can no longer give milk, she's kept there, and the male calves are all kept there, and they get to grow up too. And it all seems very idyllic until you start to do the math and realize how impossible that would be in any sort of economic reality for right now. But I was polite to this woman. I don't know everything. There may be a way to do something that I don't understand. But the next morning, I wanted a lemon for my hot lemon water, which is actually one of the suggestions in Age Like a Yogi. And when I opened the refrigerator, expecting that I was going to see all this ahimsa milk, I saw Trader Joe's milk and Chobani yogurt. So even the people who want to do it better, it's just not practical or possible. And I love how the Vegan Society of the UK has in their definition of veganism that we do these things, we live as harmlessly as is possible and practicable. Wonderful British term, possible and practicable. And I think that's all we can ask of ourselves.
I think that's true because your book is very interesting. It is not requiring anyone to be vegan. It is not even
Nope.
requiring anyone to be vegetarian. And you make a comment from one of your teachers somewhere along the line said, one of your yoga teachers, I think, said, don't worry if you're not vegan. Don't worry. Don't change that now. Yoga will change you.
Yeah, yeah. She said, don't worry about changing your diet. Yoga will change your diet.
Mm.
And I think in a lot of cases that happened. It actually happened for me. I had wanted to be vegetarian at that time. I hadn't even heard of vegan for a long time. I tried when I was 13 and got really hungry after a couple of months because I didn't know what I was doing. But ultimately, it was yoga. I found 3 yoga books in the Kansas City, Missouri Public Library when I was 17. And they all said, if you want to be serious about yoga, you have to stop eating animals. So for me, it's a very intrinsic part of yoga philosophy and practice. Ahimsa, which is non-killing, non-violence, is the first moral precept. And something that a lot of people don't know who show up for yoga at the gym or the Y or wherever is that traditionally, until someone was believed to have mastered the moral teachings, they were not allowed to do hatha yoga at all. And so this first teaching is harmlessness and reverence for life. And that means certainly in our human relationships, but also in our relationships with everybody else. And the next one is honesty. So we want to be really honest about food and what we're eating. And people will say, well, I tried that and I didn't feel good. Okay, can't argue with that if you didn't feel good, but did you really not feel good? Or was it because your boyfriend or somebody in your family was giving you a really hard time? It's just like we just have to be honest. And then non-stealing is one of the precepts. And we steal their eggs, we steal the milk that's meant for the baby calves, and then we take their lives. So the whole like yoga way of being in the world is so compatible with a lifestyle that is at least moving toward veganism. But like you say, if that's not where somebody is, you just start the practices. You just work on ways to be a little bit more peacemaking in your life, a little more honest with yourself. Most of us are very honest with others, but sometimes not so much with ourselves. And as we work with these principles, then things start to change. And all of a sudden, in some cases, not all cases, we'll just see habits and attitudes fall away that maybe we tried to work on. I'm working on that. And we're coming up on a new year and people will have resolutions, I'm going to work on that. But very often these things we work on, we fail at. But sometimes if we just kind of accept ourselves and the way things are for now, and then just let those energies flow through us, that just might change things. And that's really what yoga is all about.
It's such great advice for almost anything, I think, especially as we're older, we're less likely to feel comfortable with being new, being a beginner. I think many of us think, well, I'm no good at that. I already know I'm not good at that. I already know. And maybe we don't know everything about ourselves. And you talk about some of the ideas you have in Age Like a Yogi is that some of these changes that we can make, that we can lean into, that we can try, they remind our spirit and ourselves that we're worth taken care of, that we're still worth it.
It's so important because in yoga, our essence is internal. Our essence is light, spirit, love, truth, peace, the great beneficence, even a little piece of God, if you're okay with the G word. And it is this internal essence that doesn't change, doesn't age, and that connects us with all living beings, which is another way for making going more vegetarian or more vegan a lot easier when you feel that you really are connected to the beings that are in the food system and otherwise. So, yeah.
It's just beautiful because these exercises are physical and they are metaphysical.
Everything about yoga is physical and metaphysical. And I kind of feel that everything about life is physical and metaphysical. I mean, even Western exercise. So you're doing your cardio, and that's all great for your lungs and your heart. But it's also giving you this idea of staying with something, of endurance, of building character, of I said I'm going to stay on the treadmill for 40 minutes, and by golly, I'm going to stay on it 40 minutes. So there's a metaphysical underpinning there. Lifting weights, it's to build our bones and build our muscles, but it's also a way to get ourselves grounded and to come to see that we really do deserve the air we breathe and the space we take. It gives us a kind of courage when we've got a little more substance to the body. And then finally, flexibility, where yoga absolutely reigns, although yoga is very good for strength building as well, depending on the kind you do. But with flexibility, we know that it prevents injury and it makes us more effective in our functional movement in whatever we're going to do in a sport. but also we have to be flexible for life. It's almost like we have to dance with life, like it's a partner that sometimes will throw us a move we weren't expecting. And the more flexible we get to be physically, the more flexible we can be with what life throws at us.
So, I mean, I am a very what would I say? A very I'm not a constant yoga practitioner. I have done yoga. I personally don't have a current teacher that I feel great about, and I do feel for me I really need a good teacher. But there are good virtual teachers. There are good options, and it's something that I have noticed that I've dropped the ball on since reading your book, because I do think there are people who have maybe are hearing you talk today and have never really done yoga, or have done it even less than I have, maybe after school or at a community group or something like that. Um, why why should people consider reading your book and at maybe midlife or a little
Yeah,
bit older if they don't have much of a background?
sure. Well, Age Like a Yogi has 40 little chapters, and only one of them is on asana, the what we think of as the physical aspect of yoga. And it is wonderful to add to your repertoire in midlife and later, especially if you're able to find a teacher who can adapt to any limitations that you might have, or a style that's friendlier to an older body or somebody who's had some injuries, who has developed some arthritis, whatever. So something called hatha, harder to find than it used to be, but hatha yoga, integral yoga, Shivananda yoga, these are all very accessible for anybody. The most popular style that's out there now is called vinyasa, and that means that you keep moving through the postures. And it's so interesting. When I was introduced to yoga, that was not in the West at all. And I'd been in yoga, I don't know, 15 years. And I heard that some people were doing this kind of yoga where you just kept moving through the asanas. And it's like, I mean, isn't that against the law? I mean, how can that be? But it's overstepped hatha in popularity. And so if that's the one that you're looking for, you might want to look for a class that's called slow flow. So it's that movement, which is what vinyasa means, but it's not so athletic. But if you're athletic, and certainly just because you're older doesn't mean that maybe you're not, you can do any kind of yoga that appeals. And it depends. I think, like you said, I love the idea of an in-person teacher just because in 3 dimensions, you can see what someone's body is doing. Very simple, like a plank pose, for example. Ideally, your back is going to be perfectly straight. And you don't really want your butt sticking up in the air, so you're doing a kind of half downward dog. But if it's like that, it won't hurt you. But if your back is swayed and you're holding that for a very long time in what would otherwise be a plank, that could hurt you. An in-person teacher will see that where somebody online doesn't. So if you're doing it online, be extra careful. And a yogic tenet that works for everything in life, and certainly for yoga postures or other sorts of athletic endeavors, is stop just before you think you could go further. And we have this American thing about, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to do this. I'm going to beat what I did yesterday. And I'm certainly going to beat that person over there on the next mat. That's completely anti-yoga. What we want to do is know, I could bend another inch. I could go forward another couple of centimeters, but I'm not going to. I'm going to build some humility and protect my body by taking some of the more philosophical elements of yoga and applying them on the mat as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of competitive yoga out there in the world because that's who we are. That's what yoga is. It takes whoever we are, right? We bring our real selves, our real issues to the mat.
And it's so funny. Oh my goodness. When I saw they were having these yoga competitions, like Olympics of yoga, at first I was horrified. And then I just laughed. And then I watched it the way I'd watch gymnastics or something, because it's interesting to watch people do things with their bodies that not only I never will, but that I never did. but but the real essence is to come to know who we are. And everything that we can bring into our lives to help us know the truth is yoga. There's a kind of yoga called jhana, which is the yoga specifically of self knowledge. And one of the meditations that jnana yogis do is it's called neti neti, not that, not that. And they'll say, well, who am I? I'm Victoria Moran. Not that, not that. That's not a lie. It's just not permanent. So who am I? Well, you're a writer. Well, yeah, I have been, but who knows? I could have a stroke and never write another word. I don't know. So neti neti. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not that until you come to know that you really are that internal light. And that, according to the yogis, is enlightenment.
I read some of that in your book about that exact thing, and it I found it very moving, very almost tear inducing. That idea of like to keep peeling back, what am I? What am I? What am I? And maybe you're just the person asking that question
And
somewhere.
how it helps with aging is that who I really am is not aging. And yoga also has this wonderful teaching about bodies that, yes, we have this physical body and we can do all sorts of wonderful things with yoga and yoga's sister science, Ayurveda, that I talk about a lot in the book for the care of the physical body and really acing things as we get older. But that in addition to these bodies that we see, we have these subtle bodies, astral body, emotional body, mental body, bliss body, and they just keep on going. The idea being that we are multi-layered, utterly fascinating, unique, and amazing beings. So the idea that we spend a little extra time taking care of ourselves, that we would take up a practice like yoga at an age when people are saying, oh, why are you starting something new? Yeah, we need to be starting something new or picking up something old. And it's very, very yogic to follow your own light. And maybe you say, well, yoga, I don't know, but I do Pilates and I really love that. And then spiritually, I belong to a church, I sing in the choir. Am I supposed to be doing this stuff too? Not unless some of it appeals to you and you want to add it on. If you are taking great care of yourself and finding out who you are, then you're a yogi, whether you would ever call yourself that or not.
Mm. And that harkens back to what you said at the beginning, that there are things you can take if they resonate with you, take them, and if they don't, leave them or let them just stew maybe in the back of your mind for a little while. You talk about so much, and so I was bringing the idea of, yes, many of us have either done yoga, hatha yoga, um, or maybe even do it a lot, but we may not be doing these other compatible traditional ideas in terms of thinking about ourselves, meditations, Ayurveda. You talk extensively in your book about Ayurveda and about the doshas, which are, I expect everybody to read the section of the book because it's far too complicated for us to talk about in general. But you say that in later life, there is one of the doshas that becomes more pronounced. Is
Yeah,
that what
it's
you
more
would say?
prevalent. Yeah. Ayurveda is yoga's sister science. And what is so interesting is Ayurveda is about the body and about health. And in this country, of course, we think, well, yoga is about the body and about health. Like, no, yoga is really about the spirit and about reaching enlightenment. And Ayurveda is to help with the body going along. And we didn't hear about Ayurveda as early as we heard about yoga, because when India was a British colony, good colonizers learned that you don't do anything that takes from people's spirituality or people's religious practices. And they felt that yoga was in that category. So they left yoga alone. Ayurveda was more cultural. So they outlawed Ayurveda and said that Western medicine was the way to go. So it's only been since 1947 that Ayurveda has been coming back in India, and it's come back in a huge way. There are thousands of Ayurvedic hospitals and millions of Ayurvedic doctors in India, and Ayurveda is recognized by the World Health Organization as a viable health care system. So what I find so fascinating about Ayurveda is that even though it's a medical system and they have gynecology and psychiatry and surgery and all the aspects of medicine like Western medicine has, but they have a huge self-care component. And if you do the self-care well enough, maybe you won't even need any of that other stuff later. So the essence of Ayurveda, which means the science of life, is that as physical beings, we are part of nature. Nature has rhythms. So the day has a rhythm, the year has a rhythm with the seasons, and our life cycle has a rhythm. And as you said, there are 3 doshas, and you can take a dosha quiz. There's a nice one on a site called banyanbotanicals.com. It's actually an Ayurvedic store, but you don't have to buy anything to take the dosha quiz. And you find out which of these energies is predominant in you and which is secondary. But everybody, regardless of their own doshic makeup, which is established at the moment of conception, is more kapha when they're children and more pitta from about, I don't know, 18 to 50, 55, maybe 60. And then vata hits. Usually they talk about vata coming on strong at menopause for women. Now, energy of ether and air. So it's very flighty, and it tends to go out of balance very, very easily. So what happens when we get to be 50, 55-ish, we start to notice some things that we identify as aging, but which an Ayurvedic doctor would say is excess vata. So some of those things are dryness. So drier skin, drier hair, nails that seem peely and weak in ways that they weren't before. Also, stiffness and creakiness of the joints, digestion that isn't what it used to be. And I think for a lot of people that have been plant-based for a long time and eating a lot of food that some people would say is hard to digest, cabbage family vegetables with all those wonderful phytochemicals and all the beans. But people start finding, where did my cast iron GI system go? I'm having trouble digesting some of this stuff for the first time. You might also find that you're just a little bit less courageous, a little bit more afraid. You might get an envelope in the mail from the IRS and your heart goes to your stomach, or vice versa. Stomach goes to your chest. That maybe wouldn't have happened 5 years ago, and now it does. And these are all signs of increased vata. And the big one being that you get colder more easily. And this is hot flashes notwithstanding, that's a whole other thing. But generally speaking, the older we get, the colder we get. And I always used to wonder, why do all of the retired people go to Florida and Arizona? Well, it's vata. So what are we going to do to calm down vata dosha and slow down aging? Well, there's lots and lots of things. That's why I wrote the book. But some of them are just keep yourself warm, especially this time of year. You always want to have your ears covered when you go out. Vata doesn't like moving air. So if somebody's got a ceiling fan, don't stand under it. Go somewhere off in a corner where that's not going to be affecting you. You want to take nice warm baths, not scalding hot, because anything that is too extreme, it's not Ayurvedic. But you really do want to nourish yourself, nurture yourself with your bath or your shower. I also explain in the book how to do Abhyanga, which is warm oil massage. And that's something that you can do a couple of times a week, even more often in the winter, that is massaging your body with warm sesame oil. And if you've got the time, letting it sink in for about 20 minutes. And you can meditate during that time. You could take a morning walk during that time. And there's a calmness, there's a warming to this. A lot of people report that their joints feel better when they've been doing this oil massage. And then finally, the last little tip I'll give about Vata, there are plenty more in the book, is to have a daily routine. And it's good for everybody to have a routine. We know that from raising children, from having companion animals. They just do better when they know what time they're going to eat and what time they're going to get up in the morning. But it's so important for everybody, especially Vata. So you want to get up early. And if you feel like you're a night person, just remember that if you lived before Edison, you couldn't be a night person. You would have tripped over the furniture. We're designed to see in the daylight and sleep at night. So you get to bed early, you get up early, you get some sunlight first thing, or if there's no sun, you can use one of those lamps, those seasonal affective disorder lamps. But this is to set your biological clock. Your chronobiology actually is a new field in Western medicine. It has a lot in common with Ayurveda. So you want your day to be in this beautiful rhythm. You want to have some kind of breakfast. If you're not very hungry, it can be light. But you want, if at all possible, to have your largest meal in the middle of the day, because this is when Agni, their digestive fire, is hottest. And according to Ayurveda, perfect digestion leads to perfect health. Little supper at night, finish that 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, and you should just feel a whole lot younger really fast.
Victoria, that is so much. That is so much. And I think if people are listening to this and thinking, that sounds like doable, that sounds like I could try that, or one or two or three of those things. I want you to know there are dozens and dozens more ideas that Victoria has in her book for you. And before I let you go, Victoria, I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about the idea of the warrior challenges, because I do think that that's something that some of us in midlife and later, we stop having these warrior or these hero challenges.
Yes. And the last section of the book are warrior challenges, because I think it's important, especially if you're inspired. I've so often read a book or watched a documentary and it's like, yeah, got this. But then it's, what do I do now? And so the warrior challenges are just a way to get in touch with your inner passion, your inner fire, to get out there and create a wonderful life for yourself now, and perhaps also a wonderful legacy. So the first warrior challenge is dare to live fully. And that seems like it ought to be really easy, but it's not, especially when limitations crop up. So I think about even the seasons of the year, and I'm in the Vata stage of life, plus I'm also a Vata body type. So I don't want to go out when it's cold and dark. And I remember earlier in my life, it would have been like, yeah, there's a party, we're going out. And so on the one hand, you don't want to force yourself into something that your own physiology is telling you is from the past. But on the other hand, you want to invest in living fully, whatever that is right now. And I talk about living fully role models. And one of mine is my first yoga teacher. I had been reading about yoga in Kansas City when I was 17, as I said. And on my 18th birthday, I moved to London. And one of the things that happened for me there was finding my first yoga teacher, Stella. And it says in the book that she's 98, but now that we're ready to go to print, she's 99. And she still teaches a yoga class every week. She lives in a third floor walk up. She has a women's salon every Sunday morning. And the only rule for attending is that nothing is censored. And if you're easily shocked, leave. So you have these role models. It's like, okay, I'm going to do that. I want to live fully. And then we've got Dare to Live Your Dharma. And Dharma is roughly translated as duty, but it's really what you came here to do. And so often we spend so much of our earlier lives doing what we need to do or what we're supposed to do or what's expected that we show up at retirement age or looking at retirement age like, wait a minute, where did I go? Well, you're still here. And you've got this dharma, this calling, and maybe it's been simmering on a back burner. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a business, maybe it's another degree you want to get, maybe it's traveling somewhere. But if it's really in you and it just doesn't go away, that's important. That's something to pay attention to. Then we talk about daring to make peace with mortality, because we show up here and it's just the truth that even as babies, we are not going to be here forever. And so to almost in the yogic way, just get it out of the way already. It's like in every yoga class, there is a relaxation pose at the end, yoga nidra, in a lying flat position that translates as the corpse pose. And a lot of people will call it sponge pose or something that isn't as, deadly as corpse pose. But the ancient yogis called it corpse pose on purpose because, well, number one, it's a great way to rest. If you really have nothing to do on this earth, you can rest pretty well. But also because we just need to come to peace with we're not here forever. But while we're here, we are going to do a bang up job of it.
Victoria, that is very inspiring. I totally I want everyone to look for this book. You can pre-order it now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And pre-ordering is very helpful to an author and to the to advanced sales. So pre-order. It's called Age Like a Yogi, and by Victoria Moran, her 14th book. And we can also find Victoria Moran. You have a podcast, Main Street Vegan. You also have a certification program for vegan coaches. You have a lot going on. You certainly have your dharma cut out for you.
Well, now I added to it as one more book since you had said 15. So
I made a mistake.
So thank you for all that. So for pre-orders, if people feel inspired to pre-order, thank you so much. You can do that from any online or actual bookstore, even though the book isn't in the stores. A brick and mortar bookstore can do a pre-order for you. And then we've got a couple of perks for people who pre-order. One is that on January 12th, I'm going to do a day-long Zoom seminar that you can be part of. And this is live and real time and all that. If you're not available that day, it will be recorded and you'll receive a recording. And also for pre-ordering, if you tell us that you've pre-ordered, you'll get the Age Like a Yogi e-cookbook. Because a lot of vegans say, oh, well, I'm not interested in Ayurveda because they use butter and they use ghee. Well, I don't. And so the recipe book that you'll get from us, as well as the books that I recommend in the recommended reading and cooking section of Age Like a Yogi, are all going to be vegan. So to get the seminar and the little cookbook, just write to assist@victoriamoran.com. And my assistant will get those. Just put in a copy of your receipt. And if that's hard, if that's difficult, it's like, I don't know how to put my receipt in there. Just tell her you bought it and tell her I said it was okay.
just for you, Victoria, thank you so much. So it's assist@victoriamoran.com. We will have all that in the show notes to remind people, and that's by pre-ordering Age Like a Yogi. And everybody should check out Victoria Moran's other books too. They're great. You can pre-order this and read one of the other ones. What would you like them to all read while they're waiting?
Oh gosh. Well, I think since you've described your audience to me, I think Main Street Vegan, kind of an oldie but goodie, would be the best. Main Street Vegan has given me the past 12 years of my life and a life chapter going forward. It's launched, as you talked about, Main Street Vegan Academy, where we train vegan lifestyle coaches in live and interactive Zoom classes. There's Main Street Vegan Productions. We did a documentary in 2019, A Prayer for Compassion. We're working on a feature film about a cow who escapes from a slaughterhouse, Miss Liberty. So yeah, Main Street Vegan, that's a good one.
That's an excellent book and also full of information, loads and loads of information. Victoria, thank you so much
Oh.
for joining us today. And I don't know how to let you go, but I think I need to let you go.
Well, we will reconnect, and such a pleasure to be on your program and get to talk to your listeners and have this time with you.
Thank you, Victoria. So what did you think of Victoria? If this is your first encounter with Victoria Moran, you're in luck. I think you're in luck because she has books, blogs, YouTube videos, her podcast, Main Street Vegan. You have so much to explore to get to know her while you wait for Age Like a Yogi to come out on January 14th. And if you didn't quite catch what Victoria said about the pre-order bonuses, I'll have it written in the show notes, but it's pretty simple. When you pre-order Age Like a Yogi, you'll get an email receipt. Just forward it to Victoria's assistant, which is assist at victoriamoran.com. And those pre-order bonuses include an e-cookbook of Ayurvedic recipes, but all vegan, and an invitation to Victoria's January 12th Zoom seminar. So if you email your pre-order receipt to assist@victoriamoran.com, you will receive both. And here's my little advertisement for somebody who doesn't know I advertise for them. I very much suggest that if you are in the U.S., that you order from bookshop.org, where your purchases support independent bookstores in general. Or you can also choose your local or favorite independent bookstore. And if you don't have one, here's another advertisement no one's paying me for. Broadside Books in Northampton, Mass. is a great store to support just down the street from my alma mater, Smith College. Independent bookstores are not having an easy time of it. So I know Broadside Books has been committed to really wonderful community engagement with the books that they feature since the 70s, since even before I was at Smith College, which it's right next to Smith College. And a lot of Smithies, I know you tune in here every week, and you say I don't mention Smith enough. So I'm going to take this opportunity to say hello to all my Smith colleagues, the ones I know and the ones I don't know. Thank you for supporting Veg Your Best. And all the women's college graduates out there, we are a formidable bunch. We're not the only great gals, but we are pretty great. Okay, that's it for this week. Happy New Year to everyone. Get out there and veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.